Mr. President, I've been in Congress now for about 18 years, 12 years in the House and now 6 in the Senate. It's the honor of a lifetime, obviously, to represent Arizona here. But after being here so long, I have to say I get a little defensive when I hear somebody say that Congress is incapable of solving big problems. But it's a hard point to argue after watching the Senate squander the best opportunity we've had in a long time to pass legislation to protect young immigrants impacted by an uncertain future of the DACA program and in strengthening security along the border. Somehow, despite sweeping public support for both of these items, we've been incapable of finding a compromise that could garner the support of 60 senators. To say this was a disappointment would be an understatement. I do appreciate Majority Leader McConnell's attempt to facilitate an open debate. I truly believe he wanted this process to provide the necessary dialogue to deliver an effective bipartisan solution. I also know that I'm certainly not alone in my efforts to forge genuine consensus on these subjects. There are a lot of members on both sides of the aisle who want to fix this problem. Unfortunately, as too often happens, the siren call of politics brought too many of us back into partisan trenches, and it blocked any hope of real results. There are teachers and students and members of the military who are DACA recipients. There are friends and colleagues who represent the very best ideas of America. There are hard workers and productive members of their families and the communities. They don't have the luxury of being able to admit defeat and move on to the next topic. Likewise, those of us from border states like Arizona know that law enforcement officers tasked with patrolling the border and protecting our neighborhoods just can't give up and go home. We have neighbors and family members who simply cannot shrug off failure and accept the status quo when it comes to securing the border. That's why I've introduced legislation to extend DACA protections for 3 years and provide for 3 years of increased border funding and funding for border security. I'm the first to admit that this is far from a perfect solution, but it does provide a temporary fix to these crucial problems. It begins the process of improving border security, and it ensures DACA recipients will not lose protections and be left to face potential deportation. We in Congress have too regularly confused action with results and have been entirely too comfortable ignoring problems when they seem too difficult to actually solve. To put it as bluntly as possible, this is simply not something that we can ignore any longer. I'd like to thank Senator Heitkamp for joining me as a co-sponsor on this bill and illustrating that the drive to get something done on these issues is a bipartisan effort. She's been a trusted partner on border security and sensible immigration reform measures. We may not be able to deliver a permanent solution to these problems, but we cannot completely abdicate the responsibility of Congress to solve them. There are many people whose lives and well-being depend on our ability to deliver meaningful results here. Therefore, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 300, H.R. 1551. I further ask that the Flake substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to, the bill be amended and considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions be considered to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
Senator from Oklahoma.
I reserve the right to object.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, there's no question that I want to be able to see legislative solutions here, and I absolutely am glad to be able to stand with my colleague from Arizona to be able to talk about how do we get a solution on this issue. The challenge has been all along, as that we have seen from Congress, especially over the last 20 years. If Congress does a temporary patch once, it'll do it 20 times again. My concern is for the DACA kids that are in my state in Oklahoma, the 7,500 of those. They're looking for an actual solution. They want a sense of permanence. Their status has been in limbo since 2012. The question that we need to resolve is, can we actually resolve this for them? Now, I put forward a presentation, as Senator Flake has been passionate about as well, to actually those individuals ending up towards naturalization, not a temporary patch again of just a limbo status, but to actually work them through a process to get in line, to go through that process, and to actually end up in naturalization at the end of it. At the same time, do border security. Some other things that we think are connected to it. I would like to see us work through this process to actually get to resolution. A court now, in fact, a couple of courts, federal courts, have pushed back on the administration, have bought Congress a little more time to be able to help resolve this issue. I would like for us to use the better wisdom of that to actually get to a solution during that time period. So the goal is, how do we get this resolved? Now, I'm pleased to say the president's moved a long way on this issue. The president's laid out naturalization for 1.8 million people, border security, and is engaged in a conversation to actually get it resolved. We had a completely failed effort a couple of weeks ago with 4 different proposals coming up, all 4 of them getting bipartisan support, but all 4 of them failing. I would love to see us get on any one of them and start amending it. Senator from Arizona and I have already had conversations about changes that I would like to see, even in some of the bills that I supported. But the way to be able to resolve that is get on one of them. Let's actually start amending it, and at the end of it, let this body work its will. The frustration that I've had with this body in the short 3 years that I've been here is, most of the time, we fail to even debate an issue. When it requires 60 votes to even open debate on something, we just simply start the process, never get 60, never debate it, never resolve it. And then this body just moves on to a new topic. So I commend my colleague from Arizona for reminding this body again, we have an unanswered issue still sitting out there that needs to be resolved. I agree with him completely on that one. Let's get on it, let's resolve it long term, and let's provide a sense of permanency to this solution on it. Not another temporary patch that will end up being the same temporary patch we will do 3 years from now, 3 years after that, 3 years after that. May I remind our body that we are on our 4th continuing resolution just this year. We need to resolve this and to be able to take the moment to be able to do that. So with that, I would ask unanimous consent that the Senate modify his request to the Senate resume consideration of H.R. 2579. I further ask the pending amendments be withdrawn with the exception of the Grassley Amendment 1959. Finally, I ask the Grassley Amendment be agreed to as the bill is amended to be considered and read a 3rd time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made, laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Does the senator from Arizona wish to modify his request?
Reserving the right to object. Let me just say that we had a debate for a week. I commend the senator from Oklahoma for his hard work on this topic and constructive contribution during that entire time. We considered several proposals, one of which was this proposal, the Grassley Amendment. It did get bipartisan support, but still fell well short of the goal. I think there were 39 votes in favor. A countermeasure that I supported, we had bipartisan support, but we failed to get the 60 votes as well. We only got 54. I would love to get a permanent solution. I've been working my entire 18 years in this body to try to get comprehensive immigration reform through. The problem is what has been proposed as an amendment here is, for all intents and purposes, comprehensive immigration reform, which would make changes to the legal immigration structure moving ahead. That's simply too much to bite off at this time. And so, as much as I don't like to do it, I'm offering something that is a stopgap, but at least it's 3 years. At least it will give those affected 3 years and for us in Congress, some time to actually come to a solution. What we cannot do is force these kids through more uncertainty. So I would love to get to a permanent solution. That's what I've tried to do for a number of years here. I know the gentleman, the senator from Oklahoma has as well, but we just can't do it right now. So I would prefer to simply go with the 3-for-3 amendment that I'm asking, 3 years of extended protections on DACA in exchange for 3 years of border security funding at the President's request for this year. I think that that is a realistic proposal that we can get bipartisan support for here and in the House, and I believe the White House can support it as well. And so I would object to modification of the request.
Objection to the modification is heard. Is there objection to the original request?
I do object.
Objection is heard.